Welcome to another episode of Wrestling Tonight, covering all things pro wrestling. As always, live from No Cell Studios on the Tavern, ACEFIELD Retro. And joining on this great Monday with the one bad chat himself. What's up, dude?
Not a whole lot, man. We got a good event, big event to preview. We have a new debut in WWE, and we got a Twitter tirade from Mr. Tony Khan. So a little bit of everything for you guys, a little bit of Impact, a little bit of AEW, a little bit of WWE, spreading around the love. So I'm excited to get into it, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with Impact, I think we need to put a lot of emphasis on what they've been doing over there with Bound for Glory build and the stuff they have going on, because if you're not watching Impact, guys, you guys can also check us out 10 p.m. after Impact on Thursdays. It's can't miss stuff, man. The main event is going to be absolutely dazzling and has the potential to be match of the year, if not at least an Impact. But man, there's a lot of cool topics here. I like when we did diversify exactly what the topics are. It's not just heavy on one thing. It feels like we've really spread the love, as you said, this week.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point on Impact, man, guys, stick around for big story number 3, because the Bound for Glory preview, this is a loaded, stacked card. If you guys aren't, you need to stay up on Impact Wrestling. If you can't watch the weekly TV, but you still kind of want to be in the know, like Ace said, Thursdays, 10 p.m. on our YouTube, you can watch Impact, or you can listen to Ace and Colton break down Impact, keep you in the loop. And if you can't watch on Thursdays, you can check it out Friday on our app on Spotify.
Absolutely. Well, that being said, we have a former resident of Impact Locker Room, and he made his debut elsewhere. Let's get to big story number 1.
Big stories. Story 1.
So we have the former TNA and NWA World Champion Nick Aldis making his TV debut for WWE as what we are all surprised to find out, an authority figure. In this chat, this news broke earlier on in the day, so it was not really a surprise to see him come out, especially the way when Triple H was setting the table for this. But the fact that he is the general manager of SmackDown and he's going to be on screen for a bit, sharing duties with Adam Pearce, who's been on our screen unassumingly, and that's another conversation for another time, where Adam Pearce ranks as far as authority figures, because he's lasted a very long time, more so than a lot of guys, but we'll get into that another time. But the fact that Nick Aldis is going to be on our screen, we thought he'd be a producer. We were hopeful he'd be an in-ring talent, but we're going to get kind of a both, his feet in both sides of the worlds here. He's going to be on screen as a general manager, which plays a large part in storytelling. So we're going to get to see a lot of Nick Aldis and what he can do with his charisma.
Yeah, and when it comes to mic skills, Nick Aldis, we're going to see a lot of that charisma, because dude can talk. If you guys are fans, we got a little taste of that back in the Impact TNA days when he was Magnus. He kind of showed what he was capable of, but I think he really kind of solidified himself as a top guy in NWA. We had that NWA 70 match with him and Cody Rhodes for Sweet Charlotte, the 10 pounds of gold, iconic, kind of predated AEW. And those Power days, NWA Power on YouTube, he was kind of the linchpin of that entire company. Him and Billy Corgan were kind of hand in hand together. And I guess that kind of all went sour. I think we've discussed in the past their falling out. But when I look at this, and I want to kind of get your take on it, Ace, is I think Nick Aldis, I know he's in a GM role right now, and who knows if this could lead to him being in ring, because I think he's definitely not hanging up his boots for good. He is in the prime of his top tier status, but I think Nick Aldis is tailor-made for WWE.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this when he first came over there, and we were disappointed to find out that he was doing this introductory trial run as this producer, and we were hopeful that he eventually would put the boots back on and wrestle. But the fact that he's a GM, like you said, is it's the best of both worlds. We have the opportunity to see him on our screen cutting promos. He's going to be involved in some, backstage segments, in-ring segments, but he's also has the opportunity to eventually work towards that. We've seen authority figures. Shawn Michaels was an authority figure and then eventually transitioned back in the ring. Stone Cold, of course, was an authority figure. There is an opportunity and a road to get there. I think right now having his personality on the screen is a breath of fresh air. And we saw him kind of enact his power here. And I always like, the authority figure is a trope that is overused in wrestling. There's no doubt about it. But when it's done right, it can be done in a really good way. And the first thing they did was introducing Kevin Owens as the newest member of the SmackDown roster as the trade for Jey Uso and Raw, closing that loop that has been open for a bit here, and then making some matches. It's definitely simple, and it simplifies the booking to just say Nick Aldis said so, and they've been using it on Raw and SmackDown with Adam Pearce. But his new role, like, I think it's really cool because, like, it took it from him being behind the scenes and helping guys, and that is important as well. We would see his fingerprints on all different matches and maybe storytelling, but we're actually going to get to see him in the ring, and people are going to get to know him that have no idea existed. Maybe they'll go back and check out his back catalog.
Yeah, and I think a pretty important part of him being a GM that plays pretty heavily, at least for me and fans that know who he is, maybe not the casual WWE fan that doesn't know who Nick Aldis is, but the people that know, he was doing his best work in ring in the last 5 years. I like, when you look at Adam Pearce, I never thought, man, he might get physically involved. When I look at Nick Aldis, I'm like, they have it in their back pocket. If they want to do some sort of story where he loosens up the tie and takes off the suit and puts on the boots, they have that in their pocket where you've got a GM now where storyline wise, if you want to get to a point where he wants to get physical, he can get physical, which is an interesting wrinkle because in the past, GMs have been people like Eric Bischoff or Mick Foley when he was not really taking bumps on that level. So, and Adam Pearce has kind of hung up his boots too, but with Nick Aldis having that little wrinkle of, man, he could get involved on a more physical approach. I think that's a nice wrinkle to having Nick Aldis as your GM.
Yeah, and I don't really have confidence that they're going to diversify what they've done. It's just plug and play with these figures, and at least it's someone we like. I mean, Adam Pearce, like you said, is a wrestler that has a history. They kind of treat him as a geek on screen. They don't ever really reference his time in ring. I think they will reference Aldis's time, and they kind of have to, especially since, like, it's pretty public, the NWA stuff, the Impact stuff, and he finished up in July. We forgot that he was involved in Slammiversary. For all we thought, he was going to be involved in this build to Bound for Glory. He lost the world title match to Alex Shelley, and then he was done. And we were all surprised, like he was leaving. It was a handshake deal. And we know that his run in NWA was kind of ended with a boom in a bad way, where he was the face of power, and him and Billy Corgan had a very infamous fallout that was played out in the news over here, and we've talked about it. But I mean, 1,000-day plus run as NWA world champion, one of the more modern world champions outside of the company, WWE that is. And he's very important to wrestling lineage. So having him here has prestige. I'm sure they will reference it because it definitely adds weight to what he's saying. So this is cool to see. But the other layer of this chat was Ringside News, and whatever you guys want to wait and put into Ringside News. I know they've been wrong on things, but they were reporting that the decision for Kevin Owens being the guy traded from Raw to SmackDown for Jey Uso was one that WWE essentially made immediately after the Uso trade. So it was never going to be Cody Rhodes. The other thing was Nick Aldis, up until Thursday morning, he wasn't going to be an on-screen, on-air guy. And they wanted to figure out a way to get Kevin Owens to SmackDown and figure out a way to make it make sense. And someone had said, floated to Triple H, what do you think about Nick Aldis? And he liked it. And then all of a sudden, it was there. So things happen pretty quickly. So Nick Aldis probably had to pick out a nice suit and come on screen. And he looked seamless. Cutting that promo, he grabbed the mic. He's extra comfortable in there. He looked like he grew there, as they say.
Yeah, he looked threatening too in that suit, man. He's in shape. He fills that suit out, and there's a presence with him. And like you said, he just rolled into that promo. I mean, when he extends his hand to Dom and says, "I'm a big fan, ... of your dad." Such a great dig. And Aldis has a lot of wit, man. He's going to be able to think on his feet and pull some things out, because if you watched NWA Power back in the day, those were unscripted. When they would go up to the podium and cut these promos, there was no script there. It was, flying by the seat of their pants in a live situation, live to tape. So I think we're going to see him really flourish here. Now, the interesting thing about this, and I want to get your thoughts on this too, Ace, is they allowed him to keep his name. They didn't give him some fake name. Adam Pearce, same way. They let him have his name. We're not seeing, Nigel McGillicuddy or some fake name attached to Nick Aldis. He is Nick Aldis. When you see that they allowed him to keep that name, is that kind of them showing their cards that they don't see him as an in-ring talent? Like the fact that they're letting him keep his name, is that something that maybe tips their cap about, hey, we're not going to do any in-ring stuff with him, so we don't have to worry about licensing and merchandise and him eventually leaving and taking that name into another promotion? Do you think that's kind of a telltale sign with that, or what's your take on it?
It could be that, or it could be the perception they have of Impact and NWA as not even a legitimate, competitor. They probably look at him as like, oh, it's nice that he's doing stuff over there, but is he ever going to reach the highest of heights elsewhere? And I think it also speaks to the venom that they have towards AEW. Like this guy is someone who's as accomplished as it gets outside of the company, just not in AEW, Impact, NWA, even the independents. He was a force to be reckoned with. And I think it speaks more to that. And even if he does use his name and wrestle in the ring, I don't think they probably perceive him as a guy who could be a game changer going over to AEW, which, remains to be seen. Could he be a guy that they build around? Of course. But, I think he's definitely on the latter half of his career as far as in ring. So I think they're probably going to soak up as much from him here. And by the time they're done with him, what's going to be left as far as value in that name? And I think it adds prestige. And this is Triple H, again, fingerprints all over it, where Triple H values wrestling outside of this WWE bubble. Yep. I think he looks at Nick Aldis as valuable as a name, whereas Vince McMahon or Kevin Dunn back in the day would have said, we got to change his name to something else. He needs to be in-house. Triple H does value the creative process elsewhere. So I'm assuming this would be coming from his mindset because he's watching. He knew what Nick Aldis was doing outside of WWE.
Yeah, and I think there's a little bit of, they, regardless of the trash bag situation with Mickie James, I think maybe him keeping his name is a little bit of a showing respect for Mickie James and saying, hey, we're going to treat you right. We're going to let you keep your name, all of that stuff. And also maybe it's a sign of how they view him. Cause I've always thought Nick Aldis is a Triple H type of guy.
For sure.
He's all about body. He's a body guy. Triple H was a gym rat, all about the physique. Nick Aldis is very much cut from that cloth. And maybe this is them seeing a little more value in what he has done up until his WWE run, because AJ Styles got to keep his name.
True.
And they let him come in and work off of that history. And now Nick Aldis is coming in. I know he's just a GM, but they're letting him keep the name. That says a lot in certain ways.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And also, just to kind of close the loop on him, seeing him in between Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes, how poetic. As you mentioned, the matches that they've had over the 10 pounds of gold and not main eventing, but one of the highlight matches built around the original All In in Chicago was that title match and Cody's quest to become and hold that championship that his dad held. He defeated, as people forget, Nick Aldis. So he was essential to if not the building blocks underneath the ground to get AEW off the mat and build what they eventually became. Nick Aldis is essential into what that event was. I don't think without that, there's a lot to be said about this match. Was the biggest match that they had on the card that had the most build. It was being built everywhere. It was being built as this old school NWA World Championship match. And you need that type of a match to bring in the casual fan. In a lot of ways, I don't know, chicken or the egg for me. Like, I don't know if that was what initially got me to buy the pay-per-view, but I was sold in on what they were doing with the movement with the Bucks and Kenny Omega and Cody Rhodes, and seeing that quest and seeing him hold up that title, it meant a lot for that event.
And I'll say this, man, if I'm putting my booking hat, I don't know if this is something WWE would do. I don't know if they're going to tap into the history between these two, but if you look at the history between Nick Aldis and Cody Rhodes, they had the big match at NWA 70 for Sweet Charlotte. They had the big match at All In for Sweet Charlotte. And they've always talked, back when Cody was in AEW, they always talked about that trilogy, finishing that trilogy. Now, if we see Cody take the title at WrestleMania 40, with how it looks like they're building towards that, Nick Aldis taking that tie off as GM and saying, hey, Cody, we have unfinished business. I want a shot at your title. That's a good little tiny, maybe couple month run program for Cody, fresh off of winning that title. That's something fresh, something new. That's something in their back pocket. If they want to tap into that, they can. So it's something to look at, because when Nick Aldis was standing in between Roman and Cody, he didn't look just like a GM to me. He was eyeballing them like, hey, I could get into the mix here. So it's something to kind of track and watch moving forward.
The great part about it, if they do pull the trigger at WrestleMania 40, which is not a guarantee that Cody's going to win, like there's the chance that they continue this Roman reign down the line. That is, people don't talk about that part, but they're like, oh, is it LA Knight or Cody? Maybe it's neither one right now. Maybe it's going to be stay with Roman. But they have story progression following a Cody win. We talked about, you just mentioned Nick Aldis being thrown in there, but Randy Orton's on his way back.
Yep.
You also have Gunther, who's ready for superstardom. So you could book out Cody's first year right there. Obviously, as champion, I would think that he should have an extended run. But, those three programs could launch Cody into this time next year, which would be awesome.
Oh, yeah. Gunther, Nick Aldis, Randy Orton, Seth Rollins could circle back to Cody. There's a lot on the table. There's a lot of interesting matchups that I feel like Roman is getting to a point where he's kind of beaten everybody almost. So if you put the strap on Cody, it opens up a plethora of matches. So it's an exciting time to watch WWE and the world title picture.
Absolutely. Well, with that being said, let's get to Tony Khan's take on what they're doing over there in WWE. Let's get to big story number 2.
Big story 2.
Tony Khan, well, he was very angry. Let's just say that. That's an understatement here. And despite WWE NXT coming out on top of Tuesday's night ratings war, Tony Khan has been taking shots still. So he's working from underneath. He was mad from the start. Before we get into all the details and all the specific tweets, Chad, you posed the question to me prior to going on air. Has he awakened WWE's sleeping giant competition? Is this a bad thing now that, because we heard the words declaration of war. This was something that for the first time, and I mean, you could trace it back to 2019. These guys have been at each other's throats for a while, but I think he has started something right now that, maybe he's equipped to handle, but maybe he's not. But at the very least, this seems to be more than just bragging rights now. There seems to be at least some personal feelings hurt on both sides, not just Tony's side.
Definitely. I mean, I think there's always been a war. I think it's been a Cold War. I think there's a Cold War between them. And now Tony's meltdown on Twitter may have heated that Cold War into a hot war. I think we're going to see WWE taking more liberties to counter program. I think we're going to see WWE ramping that up. Look, man, I love Tony. I love what he's done for the wrestling business in AEW. But when you get on social media and you fire off the things that he was firing off, regardless if they're justified or from his point of view, any of that, it's just a bad look. It's a bad look. It makes you look like they've gotten under your skin. Like, there's other ways to, it's hard for me to really put it into words, because I love when an owner isn't so buttoned up and they will fire off at their critics. I think a perfect example of this is Dana White in the UFC. He has no problem going at boxing promoters like Bob Arum or Oscar De La Hoya, and fans kind of love Dana for it. He's no stranger to dropping F-bombs and calling out his competition and saying, hey, we're going to come after you. That's what fans love about Dana. It's kind of to his detriment. Sometimes he runs off at the mouth so much, but here's what Dana doesn't do. Dana doesn't get on Twitter and fire off all these tweets. He says it on camera. The problem I have with Tony, it's not that he speaks up. I love that he speaks up. I love that he says what he wants to say. What I don't like is that he does it through Twitter, because as soon as you do it through X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, it makes you just seem like a part of the cesspool of IWC, making excuses, bitching about this, bitching about that. Now, if Tony wants to run off at the mouth at a press conference, I can stomach that a little more, of saying, hey, we're going to do this and do that. But when you're beaten in the ratings, which we called it, I mean, I don't think anyone saw AEW winning the ratings. That NXT stacked the deck. It's their own night. It was going to happen. But you like calling out Undertaker and John Cena, not getting it was the first time they didn't get a million. Things like that just sounds like, dude, just take your L. Just take the L, move on. There's other excuses that we, the fans, know. It's not your night. They stacked the deck. We didn't expect you to come out and trounce Undertaker, John Cena, Cody Rhodes, LA Knight, all the people that they brought from the main roster over. But when you're sitting there and like doing these, yeah, but this, or yeah, but that, it just, it's weak. Be strong, man. You don't have to make excuses. Be strong. Say your stuff in front of a camera. Don't get on Twitter, because then you just lump yourself in with the thing I detest about wrestling, and that's all these trolls for AEW, or all these trolls for WWE bitching and complaining about every little thing. It just throws you in with that crowd, and it leaves a sour taste in my mouth.
Yeah, I definitely hear what you're saying. I think the platform is the issue, not the message. I have no problem with what Tony has said about any of it. Nope. I have no problem with him coming at Vince or coming at Triple H or Shawn Michaels. I like that, because it brings.
I do too.
Because I think for what works against him is right now he's giving a voice to people that he should be ignoring. He referenced that the reason why he speaks up is because he's talking about these WWE bots. And this isn't the first time it's been done. He's been out there saying these things out there to justify and really defend himself. And I think he felt like this is the platform to do it. But I think you're right. I think the best place to do this would be at a press conference, at a media call, this in a professional setting. This way he can control how it's interpreted. Just like a text message, if you're arguing with somebody, or you say something could be misinterpreted with tone. With text, it's not the same thing. So having the opportunity to have inflection in your voice, to defend yourself, have follow-up questions, where it's not up for interpretation. Of course, people can quote it and put it in an article, but that's their own thing. As you mentioned, Dana White has the opportunity, and he'll say whatever he wants. And really, the other thing with Dana White and Tony Khan is they're two different people. Right. And Tony Khan presents himself much differently than Dana White does, but he also wants to defend himself in the same way. And he's in a landscape right now that wasn't created by him. He's trying to redefine and bushwhack through all this stuff that's been established. And, he's working against the grain. So no matter what, there's going to be people that don't like what he says. And like you said, some of the stuff was excuse driven, but some of it was factual. Like the stuff I didn't have an issue with was the stuff where he really put on Front Street the things that went on between WWE and Tony Khan during the, when his mother was sick, and that whole thing where there was contract tampering. He has every right to put that out there. And I don't think that's, you can decipher that how you will. He took that personally, just as, Triple H or Shawn Michaels or whoever from WWE would take whatever he says, the bald asshole comment, or the under $1 million for Triple H, for Undertaker or Triple H, or John Cena. That type of tweet can be taken personally. But I think he's using Twitter as an entry point into getting his ideas out there. And that is the issue, because Twitter, as you mentioned, is a cesspool. Even if it has all the integrity in the world, it's completely fact driven. It doesn't matter. Twitter is a place that is a cesspool, as you referenced. So like the fact that he's writing it there, you're already getting down to the level of people that shouldn't be on your level. You should be sitting above in a tower somewhere, and maybe you can have other people tweet for you or do something like that, but use your voice at a press conference. I want to talk about this tweet here, because he went on this diatribe, and I have him quoted here. And Tony said, "This weekend marks 1 year since the Mayo Clinic saved my mom's life. During her ordeal, many AEW talent came to me alleging WWE tampering and inducing them to break their contracts. I'll never forget these phone calls at her side in the hospital. It's when business became personal for me. This is nothing new. I mentioned it last year after she came home. It's relevant today because she checked in for surgery 1 year ago today. As I mentioned several times since Mayo Clinic are heroes, and thanks to them, her recovery from a very grim outlook has been a miracle. Not that I should be surprised, but the same WWE avatar accounts that spam me every day, no matter what I say or what it's about, now turning their wrath to my mom recovering from a near-death experience is why I straight hate these people to the bottom of my heart with all my soul. This to me, like, this is a human being talking about the absolute trash that come out there and say the things they say. If you read the replies, not just to Tony Khan, to anybody, you start to get into the dregs of society. So I don't blame him for reaching out and doing what he did, but you have to realize that at that point, like, you are going down to their level. And I think what you said, perfect. It changed my mind on this whole topic. Because I was about to say, like, I think this is fine. He should just change the platform and let his voice be spoken, not be read and interpreted.
100%, man. And I'm with you. Like, no matter what he says, people are going to spin it. And I think he is justified in saying the things about his mom. I think the fact that it's personal for him, it's just the format he's picking to make these claims. Look, man, I think fans have their minds made up on Tony. The people that come after him, and every time he said, there's nothing he can say that they'll be like, yeah, he's got a point there, but he does have a point. And the thing that I've said for a long, long time about Tony, everybody picks anytime he says something, and it's the platform he says it on that is the biggest problem. But every time he says something, fans attack. Fans, well, Vince wouldn't be on Twitter saying this or that, or Triple H, they stay quiet. If you think the WWE isn't doing things to Tony and to AEW, you're insane. If you think they're taking the high road and they're just doing it, they're just they're attacking in business ways or with their product is how they're attacking. WWE is very smart. Everything they do is cloak and dagger, clandestine tactics. They do everything behind the public view. Everything that we're not seeing what they're doing. We're not seeing that they're going in and doing these contract tampering that Tony spoke about when his mom was in the Mayo Clinic. We're not seeing all of that stuff. They're doing things just as bad as what fans would say Tony's saying these things. I honestly, I think WWE's probably doing worse things from a business perspective, but they're smart. They've been in the business a while. They know how to keep this public image and do everything behind the scenes. And then when Tony just gets fed up with it and wants to throw it out in the public sphere, he looks like the crybaby. He looks like this. And I think that's very unfortunate, but that's the perception that Tony gives when he gets on Twitter and does this. I don't have a problem. I like him exposing them, but you're going against a Goliath that's been at the top of the industry for so long, and fans are so embedded that there's nothing you can say that's going to turn a fan. And I think a lot of fans, this type of stuff, this is what they point to keep them from watching AEW, which is totally unfortunate, because why care what a promoter's doing? The product on TV is solid. I don't think it affects it in any way, but it's all just optics. It's optics. And I tend to agree a lot with what Tony says. I just hate the way he rolls it out. I think it hurts him the way he rolls it out, but he's very justified in what he's saying, in my opinion. Like, I just hate the way that he parses out the knowledge through social media. You made a great point. You know, it's like reading a text message with the tone and inflection removed. We don't know how he was saying this stuff, but when you see it in black and white in print, you're going to draw your own conclusions.
Right. And we also have to remember this is a generational thing as well. And this is also, he is a wrestling fan at heart. So he is what makes him human is also what is his detriment, because he's just, as we like to get behind him, he's one of us. He's a guy with the passion of a wrestling fandom that precedes his time as an owner in AEW. That is a big piece to why everyone relates to him. For those that like what he does, and I personally am a big supporter of him, and everyone
Love
that
him.
throws I know you do as well. And I mean, a lot of the barbs that people throw his way, they're looking at a spot that, you know, a wrestling world without him is worse. And
It's
I think
terrible. It's dark, dude. Dark days in wrestling if AEW does not exist right now.
And he saved, like, for me, it's a personal experience, my personal experience. AEW saved my wrestling fandom. And that might not be the same for everybody. Everybody else likes the cookie cutter version of what they do in WWE, and maybe they'll get their fix in New Japan Pro Wrestling. But for me, the wrestling landscape and the wrestling boom happened when AEW existed, because WWE has to step their game up and everybody else has to get up to their level. And yeah, WWE right now is trouncing them in every single way, financially, ratings wise, merchandise wise, live attendance. They are absolutely crushing them in all those directions. But that's not to say they would be at the level they are if AEW didn't exist. And people need to realize, again, I still stand behind that Tony Khan is justified in saying everything that he says, that he can bring out the big guns and say things like, it does come off as petty to me, but so does throwing those guys at NXT. That comes off as petty as well.
100%.
I think him saying the stuff about John Cena and Undertaker, it could be, again, taken out of context, be like, this dude, what is he doing? Like, that doesn't make any sense. But it might be strategic. Like Brian Alvarez also threw it out there that maybe he's throwing these tweets and then hyping matches coming up on Dynamite, Collision, or Rampage, because it's bringing eyes to the Twitter account.
Agreed.
Maybe there's a method to this madness here, that there's something where he is actually sees the metrics. This guy is an analytic driven guy who is looking at from the perspective of, how do I get as most eyes on my product on social media? And here we are with, he knows that these tweets drive people to look at his Twitter account, and that at least you cast a wide net, you might bring some in to check out the product. Who knows? All I want him to do is put your voice on a media call and call these guys out, because you're justified. Calling out Vince for sexual allegations, calling out them for contract tampering, talking about the wrestling business at large, changing the way wrestling's perceived. All this stuff is justified, because right now WWE is, they do it through corporate speak. Like you said, they send out press memos. They do it in a board meeting. They try to block other people from running MSG. This is real shit that goes on behind the scenes. Tony Khan just has the balls to say it out in person. Just change the platform. Twitter it's like going down to the basement and hanging out with all the people and talking with them. Go up and put your voice in a recording, and then, or even a video, or do a live Q&A where he has the opportunity to say the things he wants and people have bouncing back. So if they have a response in real time, that a lot of these other cowards on Twitter with no profile picture, just the WWE logo, or just Roman Reigns as their logo, let them ask him questions with their face and voice on it, because those guys are cowards as well.
Could not agree more. I'm right there when you say AEW saved your fandom. I mean, you're telling my story. Cookie cutter wrestling had made me step away. Was I keeping up with the product? Yeah, I'm a lifelong wrestling fan since childhood. I kind of followed peripherally, but I had given up my hardcore fandom for wrestling until AEW came. So I'm with you, man. And fans out there, if you think WWE's where they are right now with the good product, with AEW not being in the sphere, you're insane. AEW has caused WWE to step up their game. Who knows if we got the bloodline unless AEW is created? Like, all of that came out of competition, pushing them, all of that. And fans need to really think of the position Tony Khan is in. It's very easy to attack this guy. He's been in the wrestling business 5 years tops. We're not talking a guy who's been versed on the industry. We're not talking about a guy who has all these people around him where he's seen how the business is played. He is a guy who's a fan who came into the industry fresh with the ideas of fandom. He had money. He could do this, but he's learning along the way. He's dealing with all of this backlash, and he's going against this extremely tenured product where they have mastered the art of media manipulation and dealing with fan backlash. I mean, this is just par for the course for WWE. They have mastered that. And it just really lights me up, man, that they will attack Tony over, these petty, quote unquote, crybaby tweets, which there's validity to that, but they will go after someone like that. But then they will sidestep and brush to the side a promoter who has been blamed, accused, indicted, or at least the court systems have been cases have been settled out of court for racial discrimination, sexual discrimination, even the big R word that I'm not going to say because it'll get us flagged on YouTube, but the RAPE, those type of allegations, man. And they will brush that to the side and take up for this guy because he's got this tenure. He gave us our childhood wrestling fandom. If it wasn't for him, so they'll kind of put that to the side and be like, and make excuses and be like, yeah, it's terrible, but there's a lot of buts from fans with Vince over much more heinous shit. But if you're quote unquote cringy as a promoter and you come off like a crybaby on Twitter, oh man, attack this guy. It's such a weird spin from fandom to pick cringy and crybaby, those type of superlatives or lack thereof of a promoter. That's what you want to go after. But where was all that heat when you had racism, sexism, all of the horrible things that were thrown at Vince? We want to forget about that. It blows my mind, dude. It absolutely blows my mind.
Do people believe that Vince McMahon would have had the restraint to not tweet when he was going at it with Bob Costas live on air, where there were opportunities for people that were posting articles anti-WWF, WWE way back in the day when he was more, at that time? This is, again, sign of the times. This is the platform. Vince McMahon went on Bob Costas and had an all-out argument. YouTube it. Check it out if you guys are not familiar with it, where Vince McMahon probably would like those words back. It's reactionary. And also, too, and we're going to talk about it in a second, I have a positive someone supporting that he does this, and also Eric Bischoff coming out and talking about this, which is laughable to me, because if Eric Bischoff was in this Monday Night War landscape in 2023 with Twitter at his fingertips, God, what do you think he would be saying? For him to be saying that he wouldn't do that, that's just flat out lies. And I know it's all conjecture of what would he do, but looking at, he was doing whatever it takes to get eyes on his product. You're telling me he's not going to be tweeting about Nitro and coming at them and saying, he would be saying worse. Let's just say that. But let's get to Matt Hardy.
If you look at what Eric Bischoff did on his product,
right,
the attention he gave to WWE during the Monday Night Wars on his product,
right,
versus the attention Tony Khan is not doing the level of personal attacks on screen that Bischoff was doing. So if Twitter existed in 1997, Bischoff would have been like above and beyond doing what
100%
Tony Khan's doing.
So let's get to what Bischoff said as a good transition. So we talked about Tony Khan taking shots at Vince, John Cena, Taker, Triple H, Shawn Michaels. And these are the highlights. This is the quote. He talked about it extensively. He's long-winded, but he said, I think it damages the brand overall because it's childish. It's not really very entertaining. It's not smart. It's like your show, not compelling. It's embarrassing more than anything. It's embarrassing. And I think fans are beginning to show goodwill. One of the things I talked about almost 2 years ago when I went on a rant similar to the one I'm on today, when Tony came in and showed up, there was so much goodwill. There were so many people, including me, while I was working for WWE. I was there. I watched their premiere episode from a WWE writer's room in Stamford, Connecticut, and I'm cheering them on because I know that a competition like that can be good. And if it is good, but there is so much goodwill. Wrestling fans all over the world really were hungry for an alternative. WWE was pretty stale at the time. It was growing. The financials were great. Stock was off the charts and everything was great, but the product itself was flat and stale. He ends it with saying that that AEW did create an appetite in me for an alternative product, much like it did for the wrestling audience, but says that this damages the brand. Again, this is coming from the guy who challenged Vince McMahon to a fight on pay-per-view. This is the guy who rode a motorcycle in. He's the guy who was checking the ratings. He was giving results out on TV. He was a guy spoiling that Mick Foley won the world championship, despite Mick Foley being a loyal WCW employee prior, pushing words in Tony Schiavone's ear, saying butts and seats. This is a guy who would take any low of low to win a ratings war, saying that it damages the brand and is childish. Are you kidding me? This is Eric Bischoff's MO 101 here. I don't understand how he looks at what Tony's doing, acting like he wouldn't do much worse with the same platform.
It's the pot calling the kettle black, man. It's the same thing. What kills me, he says it damages the brand overall. There is maybe some credit to it damages the brand with the people that aren't watching anyways. Like I think the people that have their minds made up about AEW, this is fuel for their fire. The hardcore AEW fan base, I don't think it damages at all. They like this about Tony. They like the that he stands up for himself and his brand and all of that. I do think maybe there's a few that's on the fence, that maybe there's a little bit of like, this is what keeps me from locking in on AEW. But I think it's so minuscule. I think the fans that love AEW love the fighter spirit. As childish, petty as it is, we do like that he's vocal. I don't want someone just for lack of a better phrase, taking it up the ass from WWE and doing it with a smile on his face. I like that he can call them out on their things. It just goes back the way he does it. I don't want to see you getting on Twitter and doing it. I want to see your face. And back to the Bob Costas with Vince. That's one thing I will say about Vince. It was on an interview live on TV. He had his meltdown. He looked like an ass doing it, but at least you're putting yourself out there and not just speaking about it in print. But I don't know. Bischoff is...
But that was also the only vehicle, though. Like, you know what I'm saying?
100%.
Like he had to be on that platform because that's the only way media traveled. If again, these are all if, and this is a different landscape, but Bob Costas' media thing in the news show with Bob Costas, the sporting show, was the only way Vince's word can get out there. You're telling me that he wouldn't have been at least geared towards eventually tweeting, like people all put this Vince in the character. He's too old right now to ever fit in that landscape. You got to remember, Tony Khan's a young guy. He grew up in a fandom. Like, he's us, you know what I mean? He is us. Humanized. It would be like us not reacting to the Twitter trolls. And we don't. Like, we try not to on Instagram. There's people that throw shit on our Instagram all the time saying the most dumbass shit, but I'm not going to sit there and reply to each one of them. They're not worth it. By the way, you guys are not worth it. I'm not going to reply to you guys saying the same dude saying AW sucks over and over again. Cool. Don't watch it. That's fine. But I'm not going to give any credence to that. I think that's what Tony needs to live by. Only give a voice to things that have merit. And yeah, Triple H and Shawn Michaels and Vince McMahon, what they say has merit, but some guy, again, with a Roman Reigns profile picture with no bio and 3 tweets and no followers, that guy shouldn't be given a voice. It just shouldn't be.
I absolutely agree, man. Like, you want to go see the idiots, go to our Jade Cargill Charlotte post I made a couple days ago. They came out in droves. It just proves they're not listening to what we do, because they were attacking me for hating on AEW. It's like, dude, we love AEW. You don't know who we are if you think we're just a Vincel or whatever those idiots were saying. Like,
I like Fed Brain better, but whatever. We should copyright that.
I just made a post because it came about. I told Cassie, I was like, I'm going to make a post just to see if I can stir the pot. Let's see how quick I can do it. I made that post and they went wild. So you're predictable, idiots. You're so predictable. But you're right, man. Vince has this thing, and I love it with fans. Fans are like, he's a businessman. He would never do that. He's, he does it right. And dude, look at his history. He's just as big of a reactionary idiot as anyone. He's proven it. he's aged out of the social media generation.
Yeah.
And now he's kind of hidden behind this Goliath of a company. But if you go back to the early 90s when he was still in a fight with other promotions, he showed his ass constantly. So you're
literally, yeah, actually pulled his pants down multiple times on TV. Come on.
Exactly. Kiss my ass club. But come on, man. Like, you guys are not, when they put him up on this pedestal, it's like, you have the benefit of this guy building a corporation and now being able to look like a professional hiding behind it. But he did very unprofessional things on his way up the ladder to build that empire.
Yep.
And Tony is 5 years in, building a completely from scratch history. And there's going to be growing pains, especially in the social media generation where everything is kind of nitpicked and blurbs are posted on headlines. And I don't know. It's just a double standard, man, especially Bischoff. Don't get me Bischoff. He's shown his cards too much. He's too biased against the product because Tony threw a shot that offended him and he won't let it go.
So we have Matt Hardy also speaking on the extreme life of Matt Hardy, recently offered his take on what was going on. And he had a decent quote, kind of middle of the ground, but some telling stuff. He's a guy in the locker room, a leader that everyone would circle towards. And he said, I don't think there's such thing as being too passionate about your show. Even when you talk about his methods of promotion, I just think it's different strokes for different folks. He's a younger guy. Tony grew up in a world of social media and his wrestling fandom. I think it's just what he knows. He knows that that this is the platform he can put his opinion, he can put out his promotions at, and people are going to see it. He has a large following, and he has such a figure in pro wrestling that he has a ton of notoriety. So people are going to report on it, and it's going to make headlines. That's what he's been doing the last couple of days, making headlines. But at the end of the day, the internet audience, which he really depends on a lot for AEW, they're going to read those headlines, and there's a good chance they're going to tune in because it's being talked about so much. The wrestling websites are going to be picking up all these buck wild Tony Khan tweets. So he did talk about this. And there was, I think Brian Alvarez put it on Wrestling Observer Radio talking about that. A lot of people in AEW locker room feel like he should just put down the phone and stop tweeting. Maybe that is a general consensus opinion. Maybe that is sort of, especially coming out of the CM Punk stuff, that like, all right, finally there's some calm. And now this is happening. But to me, I know there's a lot of people have friends on both sides of the fence and the tribalism doesn't exist like the fandom does for a lot of people. But in a lot of ways, this might galvanize the locker room. Like he truly believes in us. And for whatever reason, I'm sure there's some people that feel negative towards these tweets or loyal towards the other sides at very least, or maybe they don't see it through his lens. But at the very least, you have to respect him putting his opinion out there and putting himself on Front Street. He could hide behind things and he could be a silent owner. He's not. So I think, like we said before, circling back, platform is the issue here, not the message. I have no problem with him calling WWE out because this is the wrestling war. Everyone wants to quote and be nostalgic for the Monday Night Wars and stealing talent and all that. This is what it's like, guys. So don't wax poetic about being a fan during the late 90s, early 2000s before WCW went out and act like this doesn't ignite a fire. The wrestling landscape on Tuesday was the closest thing we had to the Monday Night War in a long time, just based on the fan reaction and the buzz that had going into that show. Did it live up? Probably not, because it wasn't the same with the channel shifting and going from one show to the other. But it brought me back to a time like, what happens if they eventually go head to head on Monday or Friday? That would be actually really, really fun. But we're not there yet.
Yeah. Like you said, platform. I have no problem with him talking about WWE. I never have. Maybe it galvanizes some of the locker room. Maybe some of the locker room think the tweets make the company look petty or whatever. But the last thing I really have to say is, for all the fans out there just piling on and talking about Tony, like, dude, it's low-hanging fruit at this point. Have an interesting take. Look at this. Bring an interesting take. Because all I'm seeing from everyone going at Tony and picking apart what he's saying, yeah, is it cringy? Possibly. Yeah, is it petty? Yeah. Like, but look at it. Bring some nuance to your takes, man. Because if you're commenting on it and you're just regurgitating the same old tired shit, you're offering nothing to the conversation. You are just a part of the wrestling hive mind. You're seeing what everyone else is saying, and you're regurgitating what the public narrative is. Look at it from all points of view and really have something interesting and compelling to say. Because if you're just going on and bashing Tony and saying he's cringy or saying Tony put the phone down, everybody's saying that. Who cares? Like, we all see that, but try to take another point. I'm not saying support what he's doing, but come at it with a different, fresh take, because all I'm hearing is the same tired shit from every podcast, every member of the IWC. They're just a part of the hive mind saying the same old tired horse shit. I'm so tired of seeing it. No one has an original thought in their body. No one tries to like spin it a certain way or look at it from a different angle. It's all the same stuff. It's like, have an original thought, bring some sort of element to it that's fresh and compelling, because everything is just, I just keep the word hive mind comes, every take is the same shit, just said in a different tone to me.
No, and I think that's a lot to be said about people that listen to these voices of these podcasters that are not us, but they are people that have been in the business. They hold a lot of weight because they've done things, but in a lot of ways that limits their narrow scope of the way they see wrestling, because they only can see it the way they've done it. And they hold this credence where people pick opinions from Jim Cornette, from Eric Bischoff, from Bruce Pritchard, from Conrad Thompson, from this person over here, from Ted DiBiase, and kind of mold it all together into what they believe, instead of actually sitting there and having a conversation with somebody or developing their own mindset of what wrestling is to them. Everyone is so quick to, because if you look at the groundswell of AEW in the beginning, there was a lot of positivity behind it, and that was the general consensus among everybody. You didn't hear as much negativity. And then moving forward, when it became popular to bash them, and when WWE became cool again, that became the mindset. And it's ebbs and flows. It's cyclical. It's going to go in a direction where eventually people are going to be negative towards WWE again. It happens because that's the way. The word is hive mind. People don't have the ability to critically think for themselves, so they utilize these other figureheads elsewhere to tell them how to believe. Like, am I supposed to hate Tony Khan? Am I supposed to not like what he's tweeting? How about you guys think for yourself? Maybe you actually generally feel that way, but instead of just regurgitating the nicknames Jim Cornette gives people, or gives or says what you think you should believe wrestling should be, why don't you kind of come up with your own opinion by watching the product, instead of just sitting there and not watching, first of all, just reading results online and acting like you actually watch and engage with the product.
100%, man. 100%.
All right, let's get to number 3. The company not in the crosshairs of drama, but they are consistent as ever. Let's get to Impact for big story number 3.
Big story 3.
We have Bound for Glory this weekend, and what an event it's going to be, from Chicago Cicero Stadium, and we have a big card to break down. This is going to be awesome. Headlined by Alex Shelley against Josh Alexander. We know the story here. If you're not familiar with it, Alexander had to vacate his Impact World Championship due to a torn triceps, which is heartbreaking for everybody, including me. He's one of my favorite wrestlers right now. Felt like he was doing the best work of his career, if not the best work of an Impact World Champion in recent memory. We saw him make his return at Slammiversary, which was awesome this July. He's been kind of getting back to the level where getting a title shot was always a precursor to what they were going to do. He defeated Steve Macklin. Shelley defeated Steve Macklin in June to become the champion. So this eventual meeting between the two, Shelley and Alexander, was always going to happen at the biggest show. We'll start here, man. I want your take on this, because Josh Alexander, to me, I felt like he reestablished what Impact was. We mentioned the dark days of Anthem and really where they were struggling to have any sort of prestige. I feel like Josh Alexander brings a reverence to that title, the longest tenure champion of all time in the company, bar none. The in-ring work, the guy is a true professional, one of the best workers in the business. Feels to me like a foregone conclusion he will win the title at some point. The question Colt and I have been mulling it over for the last couple of weeks is, are they pulling the trigger right now, or are they going to make him chase a little bit further? To me, I think he comes up with the W, and I think they're going to extend the program. Shelley goes back towards the tag division with Chris Sabin, and Josh Alexander goes on to do other things with the title and finish the story that was not finished in March.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Josh Alexander is probably deemed to get that strap again. I'm not sure if he would have dropped it by now if he never had that torn tricep.
That would be amazing.
when you really look at Josh Alexander, the injury was heartbreaking because he was in this legendary run, longest tenured champion in the company. But to step back and look at the silver lining of that injury, it did allow them to create a couple big main eventers. I mean, Steve Macklin really stepped up into that spot. We never saw that coming. And now he's a guy in the mix, that we like. Alex Shelley stepping out of Motor City Machine Gun Shadow and becoming, I think, a pretty damn good world champion. Like,
for sure.
He's became extremely viable, and I'm loving the kind of the heel tendencies that he's leaning into going into this Josh Alexander program at Bound for Glory. But step back and look at Josh Alexander, man. If you really look at this guy, one, he brings legitimacy to that title, credibility, phenomenal in ring. But if you were to go back to the North days when him and Ethan Page were running roughshod over that tag division, and they were, they had FTR calling them out. They were one of the premier tag teams in the world at the time. And I believe the North hold the record for the longest tenured tag champions in Impact. If I'm not correct, I believe that's the case.
I believe so as well.
When you look at those guys at the time they were on top, and you flirted with the idea of a main event star coming out of that team, I think everybody at that point pegged Ethan Page to be the guy. Now, Ethan Page signed a contract with AEW, went over there. We see how that's played out. He's had a little bit of here and there, but nothing really caught fire. And I don't think that's anything to say about Ethan Page. I think it's, the depth of the roster and the booking and all of that in AEW. But you never would have thought that Josh Alexander would have reinvented himself to be a world champion caliber guy I don't think he ever had the opportunity to show his charisma in the North. Ethan Page was kind of the more vocal guy. Josh Alexander was kind of the workhorse. But talk about a guy, when Ethan Page left, Impact really showed that they had faith in Josh Alexander, put him in this spot. And from the feuds with Moose, the feud with Bully Ray, the storytelling that they built with those two programs, now putting him in with Shelley on this kind of triumphant return back to gold, they've hit pay dirt here with Josh Alexander. I think they have a true main event talent who should be mentioned with the likes of the Kenny Omegas, the Roman Reigns. They don't have the infrastructure or the machine behind him to make him feel like that with casual fans. But if you're a hardcore wrestling fan and you're tuned into Impact, I put Josh Alexander up there with all the top tier champions in wrestling today.
Yeah, well said. I think the big thing with Josh Alexander is he rehabilitated a championship that so badly needed to be rehabilitated. The history and the lineage is there. You think, look at all the names. By that point, when he took it on, winning that title, he became a guy that his mission was to be a working man's champion, to go out there and put on these classics that people had to use and find Impact to watch them, because everyone was talking about that amazing match with Eric Young. They're talking about those great matches with Moose. They're talking about what Josh Alexander was doing in ring, using that New Japan Pro Wrestling mindset of, the work rate will bring people and bring eyes to the product. And that's what he was doing. There was a buzz. Like, I remember on the peripheral following what they were doing, but hearing about these matches with Josh Alexander, that match alone would make me seek out that match and seek out that pay-per-view. And I think that was the same for a lot of people, and giving the opportunity to develop new stars. You mentioned the irony of it took Josh Alexander getting hurt to develop new stars, but they did the same thing, as you mentioned, for Josh Alexander and even Alex Shelley, who in a lot of different landscapes, he's always been a top guy. He was a guy who Impact really grew from.
Yeah.
Chris Sabin have been guys that they're the godfathers of Impact. They really are. But
you could say the godfathers of modern tag wrestling.
100%. Or modern just wrestling the style. Like, if you look at the guys, the knowledge and what they're giving back to the product behind the scenes in the ring, a guy like Alex Shelley was always looked at, and that's the best thing about the creativity that Impact can have. They can reestablish what the norms are. They can take a guy who's a tag guy and throw him into a main event program. People don't blink an eye because they have the flexibility of really like a creative outlet to say Alex Shelley is going to be here and he could step into that role as a need. And it was a silver lining to Alexander getting hurt. As heartbreaking as it was, I think it created a dynamic, and I would never wish him to tear his triceps again. But it also now you're looking at a world, as you mentioned, Steve Macklin's now in the fold, Alex Shelley's in the fold, but we're mentioning other guys. Kushida's still up there. Kushida's a guy they can bring back in here. Yep. Bully Ray, Brian Myers, Moose, Eric Young. These are guys that all can tag in if you need them. And I think the Impact roster is as plentiful as it's ever been. And I think they have the opportunity to really shine here and bring more eyes to the product. And following Bound for Glory, they are reestablishing the way they produce shows. And then we've been talking about that on Brace for Impact, but they're going to put more emphasis on production, on polish, trying to make sure the product is up to par with WWE and AEW, whatever that looks like. Taking a step back from just being these bulk tapings and maybe having more live events and bigger events, running bigger venues. I'm excited for what the future holds. And I think the backbone of the roster is as strong as it's ever been. And what's stronger than having Alexander at the top of the card? Is that saying it's 100% that Alexander is going to win the title here at Bound for Glory? No, I think there's still an opportunity to tell story with him chasing, but I think they've divvied off the path for a bit now. They're off the exit. It's time to get back on the main highway and finish the story that was put on pause in March. It's time to get back to telling the story with Josh Alexander and see where that goes. And I think it begins with Moose coming up after Bound for Glory.
I'm right there with you. And you kind of buried the lead on my question for you is, do you think we've both picked Josh Alexander to go back and get that gold at Bound for Glory this weekend, but do you think there is a world, maybe give us a percentage, Ace, what are the chances that they go against the predictability and have Shelley retain? What's the chances of that?
I would say my gut would be 75-25. I feel that strongly Alexander is going to win, but there's still a 25%, a fourth of a chance that Shelley wins here. And I think they've told the story so far with Shelley. The only caveat that's stuck in my head is that they want to make sure they legitimize Shelley as a main eventer. Is there a conversation to be had that if Shelley loses, it was always that transition, even though he's had the championship for quite some time now at this point? I mean, he's been champion since June. So like, he's been champion for a while. So this is well beyond being a transition champion. Would that loss make people believe that he was a guy just holding it and keeping it warm for Josh Alexander? Does he need a win, even in nefarious ways, to go full heel to make Alexander, lose here? It's a difficult spot to be in. It's an unenviable task to have that pencil for this event, but there's a couple matches that way. But I'm going to go with my gut. I think Josh Alexander wins, but I think there's a 25% chance that Alex Shelley could walk out still champion.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think they have to have a very compelling follow-up feud for Josh Alexander if he wins this gold, because there is something very compelling about Alex Shelley retaining, kind of stepping into that super heel role,
right,
and having him continue. That's that long-term story. It gets you invested. But if there's something hot off the heels of this, Alexander winning that gold, I think it makes the most sense to get back on track with Alexander.
So if you're telling long-term stories, we know how it started with Alexander and Moose. How interested would this be? And I'm not saying this is what they're going to do, but they essentially could do it. They could have Shelley retain the title in nefarious ways. Moose cashes in his call your shot or whatever that, the briefcase he has, a feast or fired, I should say. And he defeats Shelley the same way that he defeated Alexander. Now Alexander has to chase Moose, and now they both look strong going in, and you have a program set in stone. I kind of like that idea.
I like that.
Because it's always difficult too. We always talk about Stone Cold Steve Austin as like the guy in companies, and no one's ever reached the heights he's reached aside from like Hulk Hogan and John Cena, but he was always better chasing. Like there's always something to be said about the journey, and a lot of the steam comes off after you're done chasing. I don't know. It's a debate to be had. And like, again, maybe they have bigger plans. I'm confident that whatever they do is going to keep me gripped, because at this point, Impact continues to be consistent. While there's ebbs and flows elsewhere, the top of the card, man, like it's stacked. But let's move into our other matches here. The Impact Knockouts Championship match, Trinity defending against Mickie James. So this is a similar story as the Alex Shelley and Josh Alexander. We have, but it's mutual respect. There's been a little bit less heel tendencies for Mickie coming in here, but she had to drop the title as well. So I think this point, this is the same story, and I'm not sure if this is going to be a precursor or maybe, I don't know, lead us to believe that they're not going to do to set it right where both competitors that lost the titles that they never lost in the ring that had to relinquish are going to win. Like if one happens, does the other not happen? Am I thinking too much into it? But she had to drop the title in April, and she never lost either. I think it's more likely Mickie James wins this match. But again, I think the program, depending on what Mickey's doing, I think Mickie is going to be where she's at on the roster. She can be full-time. I mean, she's been there at the weekly tapings. Is she going to be full-time? Or is this just meant to further Trinity going towards? There hasn't been a lot on her run, I'll be honest with you. Trinity, her chase towards the title, beating Deanna, had a little bit more steam. She's been kind of just there right now. And I think this feud, Mickie James has a lot more meat on it. Like I would rather Trinity retain the title and continue this feud elsewhere. But I think this match is sort of a dream match. Colton and I were talking about this is a dream match scenario where, present meets present and past meet the future, and Trinity kind of fits both present and future there.
Yeah, I think this is servicing Trinity for a dream match. I think this is someone she's always wanted to go up against in a big program for a world title, someone she looks up to. I don't think this is the same as Alexander returning. I don't feel the pull like Mickie deserves that belt back. I feel like this is going to be a notch on Trinity's run. A big win. I don't see Trinity losing. I would be shocked if Mickie gets the belt back, actually.
So we also have Will Ospreay versus Speedball Mike Bailey. So back in August, Ospreay was announced to be returning to the promotion to take on Speedball. And as we talked about then, it marks the first time Ospreay has wrestled for Impact since 2016. He worked a set of Impact tapings in the United Kingdom back then. Right now, he is the current IWGP UK Heavyweight Champion, aka US Champion. He's rebranded that. He did defeat Zack Sabre Jr. in a banger match. I think it was Saturday night, Royal Conquest with New Japan Pro Wrestling. 31 minutes. He now adds another match list, and this could be another one for potential match of the year. He may have 4 of the top 5 matches of the year. That's how good he's been. Last time Ospreay and Bailey wrestled in the ring, it was a classic at Rev Pro 10th anniversary show back in 2022. They've had 4 singles matches against each other. Not one is disappointed. This might be the biggest stage, though. This might be the biggest opportunity they have to show out, and I believe it's going to be Will Ospreay winning, but Speedball coming out looking like he's victorious by being able to hang with the best in the world. So this is going to be an absolutely amazing match. And the story after this is on the Fallout tapings. He's going to be wrestling Josh Alexander. So if Josh Alexander's champion, it's going to be for the title. So it should be very, very interesting.
Yeah, that'll be a big match for Impact. Ospreay going in to challenge for that title if Alexander does take home the gold. I think this match is awesome. I think these two are going to show out for sure. I think this is an integral step towards Impact elevating Mike Bailey into a bigger role. I think they've been giving him a little more time on the mic, and I think they're kind of priming him up, testing the waters of putting him up in that upper echelon. I would love to see Mike Bailey mixing it up with the Mooses, the Alex Shelleys, the Josh Alexanders. Let him at least get in the mix. Not say give him a world title right now, but being in a highlight spot with Ospreay is huge for this company and huge for Mike Bailey. And I think the mic work kind of getting upped on weekly TV is a sign that they have plans for Mike Bailey and they want to get him up to speed, I believe.
Completely agree with you. I hope they put the steam on Mike Bailey. I think he's amazing. Finding at home in Impact's been great. I talked about it before. He won the 2023 BOLA tournament for PWG. Yeah. I thought this was going to be the year he broke out. I think he did sort of, but he's been overshadowed by the performance of Will Ospreay. So maybe it's kind of apropos that he's taking on Ospreay here as a showcase match on one of the biggest shows. Maybe this can kind of elevate him to the casual fan and get them to watch what he's doing, because he's been one of those guys that's been not really talked about, but should be. He's that good in the ring. And I think putting a machine behind him, like an AEW or a WWE, if he was given the right platform, people would be amazed at what he can do. He continues to show out, and the microphone work has been getting better.
Yeah.
So we have the Impact X Division Championship, Chris Sabin defending against Kenta. So we last saw Kenta back in August at the Impact New Japan show, the Multiverse United. He appeared in that 12-man tag match, so kind of lost in the sauce there, but he wrestled for five times during this run in Impact this year. So he's been around. This is a match that could eventually steal the show. I don't see Kenta winning the X Division Championship, but again, Impact, they're a place that would do stuff like this and find a way out of it. But this match should be awesome. It fits the mold of top matches. Chris Sabin defended against Kenta. Kenta is a guy that, he's been in the media a bit. Like everyone talks about the go to sleep stuff, and people talk about his internal feud with CM Punk over that, the intellectual rights to that move. But people forget his influence in the ring and what he was able to do. Even his run in NXT, this guy had a lot of prestige behind the name, and he's a legend. He's a Japanese legend that continues to show out, and him, Chris Sabin too. I mean, goddamn, Chris Sabin is one of the more legendary performers in all of wrestling. This match has potential to steal the show. I think Sabin retains though.
Yeah, this is a marquee match on the card. This has the rub that Trinity and Mickie James has. This is a bit of a dream match. I mean, Sabin is a rock solid pillar of Impact, and you're throwing him in with Kenta, who's a New Japan legend, equal size. That's just set up for a classic X Division match. I think they're going to burn the house down. I'm excited for this match. I think Sabin retains, but I think it's going to be one of the matches that we look back on and say, damn, that was a killer bout.
So we also have the Impact Tag Team Championship on the line. The Rascals, Trey McHale and Zachary Wentz defending against ABC, Ace Austin and Chris Bay. And these guys have been kind of floating around each other for a bit. Subculture was involved in this party type of feud. The Rascals have been cheating every angle they have to retain those titles, even in singles competition. Trey McHale finding ways to cheat. Zachary Wentz finding ways to cheat. This match has all the potential in the world. I know we say it for every match, but this has potential to steal the show as well. This is the emphasis on the tag division they continue to put on these titles. I do believe ABC is going to win, though. I feel like there's some momentum here that the Rascals are going to get their comeuppance. I mean, this is the biggest show of the year, but I'm not 100% certain. If we're going percentage-wise, I think it's like 60-40. But this story has been told for quite some time now. I think it's time for Ace Austin and Chris Bay to get them back. That's not to say the Rascals wouldn't eventually get them back, but I think putting the titles on ABC and having the Rascals get angry about it could have a little bit more meat on the bone for me. But this match can be absolutely amazing, and I love what the Rascals have been doing. I think since Wentz has come back to the fold, Trey McHale's taken to the next level.
I'm right there with you. I think this is going to be match of the night, honestly. I think all roads have led to these two guys clashing ever since ABC dropped the titles, because ABC was on a roll, man. They were arguably one of the hottest tag teams at the time. They still are, but again, not to keep the FTR call out train rolling, but when FTR is calling out a tag team in another promotion for like an inter-promotional match, there's a lot of eyes on them, and they were calling for ABC. Ace Austin and Chris Bay kill it. I love the team. Ever since Zachary Wentz came back and the Rascals have kind of reformed without Wes Lee, I think it's been great for both of those guys. I think Zachary Wentz looks rejuvenated since returning to Impact, and after his kind of unceremonious exit from NXT. I think this match is going to be killer. I think ABC wins their belts back, and I think the feud continues. I think this is these two teams could be feuding for a while.
Yeah,
they're so evenly matched. I feel like all four members of these teams are kind of at the same spot in their career where they haven't even reached their prime yet, and they're putting on these classics. All four of these guys at a certain point could become main eventers.
100%. I think they might actually be main eventers right now. Like you were saying before, I think Miguel, former X Division champion, but seeing any of these guys floated up to the main event, that's the beautiful part about the way this roster is constructed, that you even have a real emphasis on the tag wrestling where they almost feel like Miguel and Wentz feel like they're on the level of Shelley and also Alexander, which is amazing. Like it's hard to achieve that. But the other thing I would like to see, and I know Hawk gets a lot of flack on this on the podcast on the flagship, is to see ABC eventually mix it up with Bullet Club Gold. I think that could definitely be something cool to see them have an opportunity. And I know the Impact AEW door has been kind of open, kind of shut at this point. They're not having the fluidity they did back when Kenny Omega was champion and when Christian Cage was over there and stuff. But I think it could be cool to see Ace Austin and Chris Bay get the platform of AEW and maybe help the tag division for AEW. They need some more formidable tag teams. Like what was a very strong point of the roster has kind of taken a dip in quality for the last couple months. And it's unfortunate, but maybe they need some of the Impact guidance, and title versus title match would be really, really cool to see. I don't know. It'd be awesome.
Oh yeah. I would love it. I would love Bullet Club Gold against, for those not knowing, ABC is, they're affiliated with Bullet Club, right? The OG Bullet Club. So
for life.
Yeah, man.
But let's pack in these next 4 matches or next 4 events just into one neat package. I want your thoughts on them, but I'm just going to read them out quick. The Impact Knockouts Championship on the line. MK Ultra, Masha Slamovich, and Killer Kelly defending against Deonna Purrazzo and Tasha Steelz. We have a Monsters Ball match, PCO versus Rhino versus Steve Macklin versus Moose. And then we have a 20-person Call Your Shot gauntlet that we know Dango's entering number 20, Jake Something entering number 1. And then finally, Mike Tenay, Don West, Tracy Brooks will be inducted into the Impact Wrestling Hall of Fame. Your quick thoughts on those kind of neat package right there.
Love that Mike Tenay is getting love. Big Mike Tenay fan. I wish he was still doing things in wrestling. Don West, RIP. All the love to Don West and Tracy Brooks, one of the OG knockouts. 20-person Call Your Shot battle, a gauntlet match. I'm saying give it to Jake Something, man. Cue him up for at least a run at the title. He's not ready to carry it, but I think he's primed to be in that main event scene. I got Moose taking home the Monsters Ball match and maybe using that to kind of go after whoever has that world title, coming off the steam of taking those dudes out. And there's a part of me, I think Purrazzo and Steelz, since Steelz has returned to the fold, I think they could beat MK Ultra. I like the team of MK Ultra. Big Killer Kelly fan, big Masha Slamovich fan, but they've had the belt for a little while. They haven't done a ton with it.
Right.
So putting the belts on Deonna, who's, she's a champ, and Tasha, she's a former champ. I think that could be good for the tag division.
Completely agree. And I think Masha Slamovich, Killer Kelly, perfect example, good friends, better enemies. I think seeing them link up in the ring is better when they're on opposite sides. So I think that's the function of that, to get the titles off them and let them feud again and have them go elsewhere. But I think you're right, Jake. Something probably going to win that gauntlet match, and then you can queue up another main eventer. He has a year to cash in his shot, so you can just always keep him on ice and heat him up when you're ready. The Monsters Ball match, I agree. PCO is on his way out. His contracts expire on October 30th. This is a staple match, and I think it's a good way to get Moose heated up for eventually his program. I don't think he doesn't have to win this match because you don't have to get pinned here, but I think it would be awesome to have him win and go and looking strong, and potentially, he could be cashing in at the end of the night. We'll see what happens. That
match to me is a 2-horse race. It's either going to be Moose or Macklin. PCO and Rhino aren't going to sniff that victory.
Right. So that's Bound for Glory, guys. We happen October 21st, Cicero Stadium, Chicago. Make sure you guys check it out. Check out your local providers. Make sure you guys support Impact Wrestling. They continue to put out awesome stuff. At the very least, check us out on Thursday. We'll be previewing it, and then we're going to be the next week breaking down all the results of it and all the stuff that falls out, because there's going to be a lot to talk about after this, because a big piece to what they're doing here is building towards all these stories eventually converging. This is their finale by all finales. Like this, Bound for Glory is their biggest show of the year. So this is going to be, this is their mania. So make sure you guys check it out. But let's get to quick hitters and talk about the other news in wrestling. Quick hitters. All right, to start with quick hitters, hot off the presses, a new report has surfaced revealing the date and location for Ring of Honor's annual pay-per-view Final Battle in December. So according to the Wrestling Observer newsletter, this pay-per-view will take place on December 29th from the Hammerstein Ballroom in New York City. And this would mark the first Ring of Honor show in Manhattan in over 4 years. As of now, no details have been confirmed, but we know the venue does hold 1,800 fans. We do know that it's been the site of ECW One Night Stand. There's been other events there for ROH. DCW just ran it back. I don't know how many years ago this was, 3 years ago or so at this point. But this is a big get right now because Ring of Honor is dead on its feet. So maybe this injects a little bit of life to have a venue like this that could be exciting.
This is awesome. ROH, even in its current form with Tony Khan at the helm, I know it's lost some steam, but ROH in Hammerstein Ballroom just feels right. Pro wrestling in Hammerstein Ballroom just feels right. You've got Eddie Kingston holding that world title, being in New York City in Hammerstein with that world title. Sign me up. I know I know Mark Briscoe is rehabbing right now. I would love to see him make his triumphant return. Maybe he's not ready to get physical, but I would love to see Mark Briscoe come back to Hammerstein and ROH that night in some form or fashion. I'm hoping they keep that title on Eddie long enough for him to lose that title to a healthy Mark Briscoe. So I'm pumped for Hammerstein, man. I would love to see AEW do some shows. Bring
yeah.
Dynamite to Hammerstein. I'm for it. 1,800 fans going wild. Let's do it.
Hell yeah. We also have in the news, Penta and George Kittle have teamed up to promote George Kittle's new clothing line with Chubby. So shout out to Matt from Extra Cooler. His George, his fandom of the Niners shines through here. Yeah. So Kittle, who appeared last year's WrestleMania, as we know, he's very public about his love for pro wrestling. He had that relationship with Penta. He was doing the Cerro Miedo touchdown celebration. He released a statement and video on a social media channel announcing that he's going to be collabing with Penta. And he wrote, "Oh, hey there, it's George again, here to introduce you to my second drop with Chubbies. Outside of football, I'm a huge fan of pro wrestling, and this collection brings my love of Lucha Libre to life. From my favorite catchphrase and colors to print that was inspired by my personal collection of luchador masks, I'm excited to share a little more of myself in a way. I hope you enjoy this collection and campaign as much as we enjoyed making it." So really cool to see Penta right there. I mean, their relationship has been growing over time. And George Kittle's a big name, man. Football is huge. I know everyone's talking about Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift, but George Kittle and Penta is the relationship and friendship I like to talk about here in this landscape.
I'm a big fan of George Kittle. Outside the fact that he just torched my Cowboys and wore a "Fuck the Cowboys" t-shirt, I'll let that slide, Kittle, because you're a pro wrestling fan, and that means a lot. When you get a big figure in another sport that reps pro wrestling, you got a fan in me, and him, teaming up with Penta. We know their history. This is awesome.
So we also have Adam Cole's on that road to recovery from injury. So Mike Johnson of PW Insider reported that he actually underwent the first surgery of his, quote, badly broken ankle this past Thursday. So we know that this injury happened at AEW Grand Slam. So he's been on the shelf, and he's going to be on the shelf for quite some time. We did hear Kevin Owens drop my good friend Adam had a surgery. Allegedly, it was about his other friend Adam that was having some other surgery. The coincidence that he has two friends named Adam having major surgery is unique to me, but I'll trust what he's saying. But anyway, hopefully Adam Cole, everything goes well and he can be back in the ring sooner than later.
Yeah, this is a heartbreaker, man. I hate
first
injuries.
Surgery of like 4. I think he needs like multiple surgeries for this ankle.
Yeah. Hopefully he's not gone really, really long. And I think they're trying to keep him in our consciousness with these little vignettes he's doing with Roddy and the Kingdom. But speedy recovery to Adam Cole. We miss you.
So this story could have been one of our top 3 easily, but Randy Orton could be returning to WWE very soon. This was reported by Fightful that they're targeting Survivor Series on November 25th as the place for him to be returning, maybe on TV prior to build up a match. We know he hasn't wrestled since RK Bro dropped the tag titles to the Usos in May 20th, 2022. So it's been quite some time. He needed back surgery. He was going to be out remainder of the year. I think there were some complications with that. There was also talk with people that they didn't think Randy would ever be back in the ring. So he's believed to have had the fusion surgery on his lower back last November. We saw him in LA for WrestleMania back earlier this year. Back then, they still said he had ways to go to return. We also heard the famous interview now with Bob Orton Sr. stated in an interview with Bill Apter that he believes doctors told his son to stop wrestling, so everyone was panicking. We'll see, man. This has been reported for a bit now that Randy Orton was going to be returning. At this point, nothing's guaranteed. Anything with your back, we've known that it can put people on the shelf for a long time. A la Shawn Michaels. It took him 4 years to get back in the ring. Hopefully Randy Orton's good to go. And at the very least, he's healthy. If he chooses it's best for him not to be in the ring, selfishly, he should, for me, I'd like him to wrestle, but I also think he needs to do what's best for him to keep himself in healthy and walking around, because he's given everything he's given to the business already. He doesn't have to give us anything more. But it would be nice to have him back, especially with that feud with Cody Rhodes on the horizon, with their history, with the legacy and all that. It'd be awesome.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the Viper. I think the benefit of him, he is a smart wrestler. He protects himself. I know that RKO, taking those bumps year after year, has kind of taken its toll on him. But outside of that, man, he is a smooth, safe, smart wrestler. Kind of the epitome of that. And to have him back injected into the fold as his former legacy brother is kind of surging up to the top of the card. It's exciting times. And to have him kind of in the mix and to see where he falls in, what's going to be his feud, who's he going to put his sights on, I'm very interested. I can't wait for Survivor Series to see if he does come back. And if he does, how is he coming back? So I'm excited to see the return of Randy Orton.
So we have NWA in the news, and Billy Corgan said that they will soon be on a, quote, top 20 network. So he appeared on Thursday's edition of Busted Open Radio, announced that the company has signed 2 television deals recently. He said he was unable to provide further details, but says an official announcement is coming soon. He talks about in the interview being vague, saying that there's other political aspects to it, that he has to make sure that those things are lined up before we can announce it. But he was pretty transparent about the distribution of wrestling and where it's at this point. We talked about the other smaller companies, Impact potentially having the beneficiary of those that lose out on WWE, those that lose out on AEW. Maybe they want to try their hand at getting in the wrestling business with a cheaper option, which would be NWA or Impact. You know, at this point, the other thing in the news, and I know you guys covered it on the flagship with the return of the potential territory days, EC3's Exodus Pro promotion out of Cleveland first announced the affiliate. I heard that there was clamoring of like potentially Beyond Wrestling getting involved in that. I'm not sure if that was wishful thinking on their end, but I did see a graphic that had NWA with them there. It definitely has potential, but like, you know, he talked about YouTube not being the spot to grow their product. And clearly that's true here. I mean, his quote was, YouTube is a terrible partner for wrestling. I'm just going to say it flat out lately because of who knows how these AI systems work. They've been squeezing all the wrestling content creators. No one can quite figure it out, but everybody's numbers are down, and that's across the board. We can't even put ads on YouTube because they keep labeling any ads we put, even if it's just Jim Mitchell saying, come watch Sam Hain the pay-per-view. It gets banned for being offensive, and we can't find anybody to tell you why you can't put an ad on there. 5 years ago, yes, YouTube was a good place to start. It helped us build the brand, starting with the debut of Power. They are building towards Sam Hain, which is a big event, October 28th. They're more in our psyche than ever. They took the title off Tyrus, EC3's champion. Maybe they build some momentum here. Getting on a TV platform is the first step, because getting off digital streaming, we know that from our firsthand account, it's tough to be out here on, especially with the inundation and just how scattered wrestling content is. You get lost in the sauce a lot. So it'd be nice to see a little bit of emphasis on TV, the traditional outlet for him.
I mean, TV is going to help them tremendously. Thank God they got that title off of Tyrus, EC3. I mean, he has his own stigma with him, but I would much rather have EC3 as my champion than Tyrus. My only thing with this, it's like, I'm tired of the cryptic press releases from Billy Corgan. Like, I get it. You can't divulge where you've signed. You're just saying top 20 network. Come at me with this when you can give us the full release. Like, I'll believe it when I see it. I hope they have a sweet deal, because a sweet deal would mean more wrestling, more places for wrestlers to ply their trade. So I'm hopeful, because dude, we were the biggest proponent of NWA Power pre-pandemic. I mean, they were firing on all cylinders. People forget pre-pandemic NWA had Eli Drake, aka LA Knight. They had Eddie Kingston, Ricky Starks, Zicky Dice, Nick Aldis. They
Thunder
were
Rosa.
firing. Yeah. Thunder Rosa. They were really doing a lot of great stuff over there. So maybe this TV deal can get them to a point where they can lure some more talent over there and build their roster out.
So we also have an announcement for the main event of WWE Crown Jewel on Saturday, November 4th. The World Heavyweight Championship will be defended in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, with Seth Rollins taking on Drew McIntyre. So we saw this be emphasized on Raw, and this is an interesting defense. I mean, this is the first match official for Crown Jewel, one of their big events, unfortunately, now that it's become part of WWE canon. Roman Reigns expected to defend the title, so we know that potentially he's going to be main eventing it. Maybe it's against John Cena, maybe it's against somebody else. But Drew McIntyre has a legitimate shot to take the title off Seth Rollins, especially the way that he's been built. It's going to be interesting to see how Seth gets out of this. I don't know, your thoughts on this? Do you think Drew can potentially win this and carry this into the late fall, early winter as the World Heavyweight Champion?
I think Seth retains. I think they're heating up a big defense for him to retain. I do love that they're putting McIntyre back up into this status, because he's kind of, I know he had injury. He's been off for a while. It shows a kind of a putting an emphasis back on Drew, because he was the pandemic champion and he never got to really hold that title in front of a crowd, and people were really clamoring for him to be back up into that spot. So I like that he's back into the world title picture, even though it's, the token title, token title they created. Yeah, I'm stoked. I don't think he wins. I think they're keeping Rollins rolling trying to solidify that world title and trying to keep him on the back burner as a potential Roman. As long as Seth has that title, Seth is a good break glass in case of emergency title contender for Roman if the worst happens and Cody goes down with an injury or anything like that. I think they're keeping him heated up with that world title. They're keeping him in their back pocket because wrestling's hard, takes a toll on the body. I think they want to know that Mania is set up before they take that title off of Rollins.
Yeah, and they're foreshadowing a Drew McIntyre heel turn. At the very least, that's what's coming out of this program here. They're being very obvious with it. He's wearing darker clothing, but he's also Seth Rollins in backstage segments are saying that McIntyre is like using mind games. So there's definitely a little bit of a motive that isn't admirable on his end, kayfabe wise. So there's something here. Potentially we could see Damian Priest walking out with the title out of all this too. Like we could see Drew McIntyre and we see a cash in from Damian Priest. That also is out there, but
God, that would be a terrible choice.
Yeah. Leaves me saying, who cares? But I think, eventually Damian has to cash in this briefcase, right? Like do you think he's eventually be successful or is he going to lose that?
I think he's going to be a failed cash in. I cannot see with the landscape and the people that they have hovering in that world title picture, the Gunther's stepping up out of IC, LA Knight, Seth, Drew, Cody, Roman, Cena, Rock, all of these names. I can't see Damian stepping up into that void. I just can't.
I think it was more predictable if they would have done it after the Shinsuke match because he was really beaten up. And there was also the opportunity to tell the story. He just lost the tag titles and then now he's coming in, or even tell the story after Finn's he's trying to get the title and then this friend comes in, cashes in. I don't know. I think the ship is sailing. Similar to LA Knight, the ship is sailing on cashing in eventually what it's going to become. And unfortunately for even like LA Knight, we're not going to mention the stories here, but LA Knight might wind up being just fodder for the bigger beast that is Roman Reigns. And that's unfortunate because he's going to kind of fall in that Sami Zayn category where no one's really, people still cheer him. They're going to be excited when he comes out, but lost all that momentum. It's like Hogan back in the day where he big boot, then leg drop and it's over. Hogan must pose. Roman must win.
They're cooling off, both of those guys, LA Knight and Damian. Damian Priest, to me, since he's won the briefcase, I feel like his star power has went down. It's weird. Like I thought it would elevate him, but he still just feels like a guy in Judgment Day to me. He doesn't feel like the guy in Judgment Day.
So we also have some news here with New Japan Pro Wrestling and Stardom are both being set to hold big events on January 4th, 2024. Of course, we all know January 4th is the weekend that we have Wrestle Kingdom. Tuesday. So at New Japan Stardom joint business strategy presentation on Tuesday, it was announced that Stardom will be running an event on January 4th prior to Wrestle Kingdom 18. The Stardom show will be headlined by IWGP Women's Championship being defended. The title right now is currently held by Mayu Iwatani. And Stardom right now is going to be, this is huge for them to be working together. So the Stardom event will take place at the Tokyo Dome City Hall. Stardom know that tickets will be made easily available for overseas fans, and Stardom wrestlers won't be a part of the Wrestle Kingdom card, but this is a precursor to eventually having that. And we also got an announcement that another joint New Japan Pro Wrestling Stardom show is coming soon. The show is being titled Historic Crossover 2, which will be taking place sometime in 2024. We saw them have an event like this back in November 2022. And we got some other news involved here during this presentation that New Japan Pro Wrestling and Stardom are partnering with other promotions from Asia to create what they're calling the Asia Pacific Pro Wrestling Alliance. So this is also some big news as well for them teaming up. So this is the press release they had. So this is what they put on social media and elsewhere. They said, as New Japan and Stardom both seek a bigger presence further afield in Asia, the announcement was made that Asia Pacific Pro Wrestling Alliance, connecting promotions across the continent, Taiwan's Puzzle, DFW in China, set up in Thailand. More to come. We'll see promising collaboration, exciting possibilities in the months and years to come, growing professional wrestling as a whole in the Asian market. So, man, we're going like kind of backwards. We're moving towards more territory days. NWA trying to capture some new territories, and now we're going to be getting Asian type of promotions that I've never heard of. Taiwan's Puzzle or DFW in China, but this is awesome because you're going to get the rub of potentially having New Japan Pro Wrestling stars and having people come over and want to work with them. That's how it works best here.
Yeah, I love it, man. You got to come together to make your mark when you're not the biggest, baddest in the land, WWE. I like how all these promotions are really getting together and trying to make things work. And Stardom and New Japan, these shows, it's going to be phenomenal, man. Stardom has some of the best female talent out there right now.
Yeah.
I mean, when we still have Mercedes Moné with New Japan still lurking, still, her return is coming. You got Julia killing it.
Yep.
There's a lot on the table here. I'm excited about it.
So we also had news earlier. It kind of dropped on Tuesday following when we dropped this episode. Maybe it was Monday, but we had WWE officially deciding against bringing back CM Punk. And again, this is all according to Dave Meltzer in the Wrestling Observer newsletter. He did state that there were sources that they were in talks, but Dave Meltzer said they, quote, they turned him down. The decision was no. We wanted to go there, and the decision was no. I mean, it can always change. But it was brought up to me that there is no such thing as forever when it comes to WWE, but it's a no for now. And he also said it's Vince's decision. Vince, Nick Khan, Paul Levesque, and obviously they decided the negatives outweigh the positives. This is not going to put it to bed. Like, this is not it.
No.
I don't think we're not done talking about this. Obviously, CM Punk wants to come back, but I think he said it best. I mean, if it's true and this holds merit that the negatives do outweigh the positives, to me, why would you change things the way it's been running? As we mentioned, they're at the hottest they've ever been. TV ratings, TV rights are as attractive to suitors as possible. Why would you bring any of the negative publicity for mediocre work rate and just some drama? Like, I don't think it's worth it. Yeah,
I love Dave. He always gives himself an out with that. Anything can change, but it's true though.
It's so true though. Like, there's no definite. Anything can change. If, like you mentioned, there's an injury or they need buzz or something happens.
Yep.
They could always call up old Phil and bring him back in.
100%. And if what was the quote? A declaration of war. What better gun to fire than, hey, we're bringing Punk back over here and we're going to make it work.
But isn't that like a wolf in the hen's house for them? Like, they're
100%.
They're releasing the wolf at, like, they didn't want him anyway. It's more detrimental to have him on AEW's roster, in my opinion.
Well, dude, in the early Fox deal, when they brought Punk in for that after show, they had to push for that. Fox had to push for that because Vince did not want him involved. And that only happened because Fox kind of used leverage against Vince to bring him back, supposedly. So I don't think Vince and Triple H are big fans of him. All the stuff he's talked, the lawsuits, but anything can happen in pro wrestling. So who knows?
So obviously there's other options from Impact, NWA. There's New Japan Pro Wrestling. You want to do something big, go to Noah, bring some eyes to there, go work some of these shows. I mean, that would bring, first of all, it would rehabilitate your image and also help other promotions. And if you really care about the wrestling business, go and do that. It's an easy out to go back to WWE and try to wrestle Seth Rollins at WrestleMania. How about go back and bring up Pro Wrestling Noah? Go wrestle Kiyomiya. Go do that.
I want to see him. I don't think his body can withstand Japanese strong style right now, but I would love to see him show his true love for wrestling and not go to one of the big dogs. Go to Impact, go to NWA, go to MLW, elevate a brand. That's going to show me, like, damn, he's in it for the love of the game. Right. Taking a big contract in WWE dispels none of the feelings that fans have about him.
Well said, and 100% true. But we also have another collaboration happening here. Both AEW and CMLL have released statements sharing their excitement ahead of this week's collaboration. So on Friday, CMLL posted an official announcement confirming the upcoming match between Mystico and Rocky Romero. That's going to be taped on Wednesday for next Friday's Rampage. So in the statement, they were saying it's the beginning of a new era for both companies. So this isn't just a one-off. It seems like they're going to be having a working relationship with them. And we have really relationships cropping up all over the place. And the other thing this kind of puts a pin in as far as the balloon goes is AEW is not going to be working with AAA anymore because CMLL and them are absolutely hated rivals. So this is maybe a conclusion to that relationship. And we know that AAA had it out with AEW back when they were using Rey Fenix and they were kind of putting restrictions on who they can and can't use for their big events. But even though this match doesn't have as much steam, Mystico and Rocky Romero is like saying, so what? This has big parameters around it because there is a working relationship in place, and we're going to see AEW stars helping CMLL and vice versa. And some of the Lucha Libre from CMLL is going to highlight them on their shows. And again, this is just a start of a relationship we're going to see more of, and we're going to see talent we've never seen before. I'm sure people are not familiar with the CMLL roster. We're going to get to see them having, big pieces here. I mean, Mystico currently holds the NWA World Historic Middleweight title, and Rocky Romero won the NWA World Historic Welterweight title earlier this year. These guys hold titles all over the place, and to have them here be used in-house, I understand. Like, I don't want to see a CMLL AEW super show by any means, but I think it opportunities that are in the future that are going to be open or beneficial to the roster and benefit to both promotions, which is what wrestling needs.
Yeah, and it continues to give us lucha libre on a major American promotion, which is beautiful. Now, is this official that this kills the AAA relationship? Because I know CMLL and AAA are bitter rivals,
right?
But I had also read a report that as long as CMLL talent and AAA talent do not work together on AEW, there's still a working relationship between both. But I'm with you, Ace. Like, it makes sense that this is closing the door on AAA, because we have seen that Roosh has kind of had beef with AAA. A lot of
Bandito,
the AEW talent,
Phoenix,
Bandito,
Penta,
Phoenix, like all of that. So is this closing that door? Because I had read that it was still, AAA was still in play in AEW.
It's certainly not, and that's just me conjecturing about it. I don't know if it's completely over, but I would assume based on reading the tea leaves that there was already hard feelings, and AEW kind of was like, all right, we're going to work with CMLL instead, because Conan was being rigid, and we weren't seeing the same type of zest that they had of having them on their show, and vice versa. And he was getting mad that they were prioritizing AEW and vice versa and all that stuff. So where there's smoke, there's fire. I mean, it's possible that, yeah, they just can't work the same show or whatever, but it just seems unlikely to me. And maybe they can put their differences aside for the betterment of both companies, because they both need the platform that AEW can provide. It would be better for AAA to put their pettiness aside with CMLL, but it's long rooted. CMLL is the longest running promotion in the history of wrestling. You know what I mean? Like there's a long rooted history in Mexico between the two sides. So I don't know. I think it puts a pin in it, especially with the Roosh stuff, as you mentioned, Bandito, and then also go down the list of not being able to utilize the talent. But we do have QT Marshall as a AAA champion.
It'll be fun to track, because, man, if AEW has the ability to work with both companies, that's exciting, because that means us fans get to see the top tier of Lucha Libre coming into AEW and mixing it up. Because I Mystico on AEW, I know some fans, who cares? Well, dude, that he's Sin Cara, right?
Yeah.
But this is Sin Cara. This is the Sin Cara that we know and love. Like we kind of laughed about when they announced Dragon Lee being a main roster member. Now it's like, the main roster of WWE is where Lucha Libre goes to die. Like, they're never given the respect they truly deserve unless your name is Rey Mysterio.
Absolutely. And I think it's good for wrestling to have promotions working together. And I think if WWE eventually gets on board, maybe with Triple H's progressive mindset, we do know he has control of creative, allegedly. Maybe we have a different change in mindset, but we shall see. We also have the teams revealed for the upcoming Super Junior Tag League. So the tournament kicks off this weekend, October 21st. At the start of Road to Power Struggle. The finals take place on November 4th at Power Struggle. We have 10 teams entering the tournament. We'll compete in one block for the round robin portion of the tournament. And the top 2 point leaders, similar to the G1, will advance to the finals. So Yo and Leo Rush won the tournament last year. Rush was pulled from the recent New Japan Pro Wrestling shows due to a fever. So Yo's partner for the tournament is listed as a TBA. It could still be Leo. Maybe we'll see what happens. But right now it's TBA. Along with Yo and TBA, it's going to be Kushida and Kevin Knight, Taguchi and the DKC, El Desperado and Master Wato, Dookie and Taka Michinoku, Bushi and Titan, Robbie Eagles and Fujita, TJP and Akira, Clark Connors and Drilla Maloney, and then Sho and Yoshinobu Kanemaru. And this right now is the 5th edition of the Junior Tag League. So Yo and Rouge defeated Ace Austin and Chris Bay in the finals last year. El Desperado and Kanemaru won back in 2021. And Roppongi Vice won back in 2018 and 2019. So we shall see. I mean, this is cool. Emphasis on tag wrestling. Love it. There's some talent here that is established. Obviously, Taka Michinoku's so accomplished, but some young talent to watch out for, like especially like a guy like Kevin Knight, who's on Impact and all that. It'd be cool to see him get maybe the rub by teaming with Kushida.
Oh yeah, Kevin Knight, Robbie Eagles, a lot of Clark Connors, big fan of. I love these tournaments. I love the junior, all the junior tournaments they do. So if you're a fan of tag team wrestling, why would you not check this out?
Absolutely. So we also had the news here with the grizzled young veterans officially back, so their contracts expired. So Zach Gibson and James Drake uploaded a promo on Saturday declaring they are back and they want to have a global takeover. Go and check this promo out, guys. It was really great.
Phenomenal.
And obviously NXT, Gibson and Drake used the names Rip Fowler and Jagger Reed. They were part of the schism with Joe Gacy and Ava, and they were the inaugural NXT UK Tag Champs back in 2019, and they were stars in the UK scene prior. So I would imagine that these dudes are going to light it up as soon as they get the opportunity.
Yeah, go check this out. But they go in talking about, they don't need the spooky lights, the special effects, the overproduction. It's a pretty scathing promo to leave a company on. I am a big GYV fan. I was fans of these guys in NXT UK. They tear it up. They were done a disservice on the main NXT when they were put into schism. They were putting on some of the best matches on NXT UK, man. This team is phenomenal, and I really hope they land an Impact. I think GYV entering into that tag division could be very, very fun. These guys, killer talent.
So part of the news, and this could have been one of our big stories, and I don't think we have the time to fully go into it, but we will soon. MJF will be speaking at an event to combat anti-Semitism on Thursday. So the AEW World Champion released a statement really referencing what's been going on in current events, but also talked about the Juice Robinson acts of bullying MJF, dealing with that in high school and all that. So we saw a lot of pushback on this roll of quarter stuff with Friedman written on it during the Bullet Club Gold's promo on Dynamite. There's been topics here. MJF has been at the forefront talking about how, he released a statement on Wednesday following Dynamite saying that, and quote, Muhammad Hassan was portraying an evil Muslim terrorist. I'm actually Jewish. I've actually gone through this. This is my real life, my story. And I look forward to giving catharsis to every single person who's ever been oppressed or bullied. If you think I'd play with that or take it lying down, or worst of all, hide from the hard conversations like a coward, you're on crazy pills. He keeps continuing talking about how he wants to have hard conversations based on this promo. And we also have, the other piece of this news is Tony Khan was meeting with a school board candidate that mentioned him on Twitter by quoting something. He had a private message. The dude released the messages of DM to talk about it. So this dude named Travis Akers, he's a candidate for the Duval School Board District in Jacksonville. So one of the many accounts that called that at AEW, Tony Khan messaged him having conversation. Dave Meltzer weighed in talking about this is par for the course in wrestling. Quickly, your thoughts on this, and just sort of like, MJF is leading the front. That's kind of changed my perspective. When they did this, I was like, maybe bad timing, especially what was going on in the world, especially early last week and continues this week. But MJF being at the forefront, being the guy that okayed it, and it's his creative, changes the perspective for me. I'm sure it does for you.
Yeah, it's a touchy subject with the Israeli-Palestine conflict going on and all the tragedy attached to that. I get some of the public backlash and some people getting upset about it, but here's the thing, man. I respect the shit out of MJF for putting stuff like this into his storylines because it puts the conversation out there, man. Like, he's not trying to hide away from it. He's not trying to handle it with kids' gloves. Having discussion is good. This breeds discussion. There are probably people in this world that would never hear this discussion because they're only in the wrestling bubble. So to be able to bring a real life discussion that's very kind of apt for the times, especially with, the global situation going on right now, I think it's very ballsy and courageous of MJF to put this into his storyline. This is something that's been there for a long time. He's been referencing this since the Punk angle back with the dog collar match. And I love this. This is what I like in my wrestling, is a little bit of reality put in there to add weight to it. And like Meltzer said, it's a tale as old as time. And it's kind of tame, honestly. If you look at some of the stuff done in the past, I like this real life emotion, and MJF infusing something that he really cares about and that he's really passionate about, bringing that into his story is good, I believe.
Yeah, and I go back and read the newsletter if you guys are so inclined to. He talks about the history of wrestling, whether it be Bruno Sammartino or Pedro Morales or things that went on with, the different types. And again, it's an ugly standard, as he puts it, to live by. But if MJF is the guy leading the conversation, I feel like he's well suited to do that, and he has every right to do it because he's someone living and living the experience as a Jewish American to tell that story. So again, let it breathe for a second. Maybe it was bad timing, but then again, wrestling is usually a commentary on what's going on in real life. And as long as like MJF has the ability to get his comeuppance on Juice Robinson, I think everyone's going to walk away happy from this. But it did create controversy for sure.
Yeah, it did. And let's be honest, Juice is going to get his comeuppance. Like,
right,
we're
of
not
course.
like that. That's what this is all about. So
yeah,
I like the real life stuff. It adds weight, and I don't think it disrespects anyone. I think this is a part of good guys, bad guys, and the feud in between.
And also the thing is, for the people that feel a certain type of way, but they are entitled to feel that way. And I think a conversation is being driven that way, which is good. Like you said, a conversation starting based on a wrestling program to have real life conversations about things going on in the real world. That's a good thing, because now people are talking about hard hitting topics. Yeah.
That's what's missing in the world, is this. People don't feel we talk at each other and we don't talk to each other. And it's good to hear opposing sides and have conversation, man. Don't try and shut people up and stop conversation. We need more conversation like this. It helps us grow.
So we have a couple more quick hitters here. A settlement between AEW and CFX over the mask worn by Luchasaurus has been settled. So now Luchasaurus has permission to wear the mask as a wrestler, but alleged that neither he or AEW had the right to sell merchandise featuring the mask design. The company cited Luchasaurus action figures and t-shirts as examples. So Brandon Thurston of WrestleNomics posted on Thursday that all parties reached a settlement. Now Luchasaurus is free to use the mask and merchandise it as he continues to do that. So Composite Effects LLC got what they wanted from this, and they settled out of court. So at this point, each party will bear its own cost. The court remains jurisdiction for all purposes, including the enforcement settlement agreement entered by both parties. So we will see maybe nothing more of this, but Luchasaurus has been on our screens using that mask. It's changed a little bit, so I wonder if that goes into effect. Maybe he brings back the old school look.
Yeah, you got to pay. If someone did that mask and you were just using it and the creator wasn't getting paid, you got to pay the artist, man.
So we also have the date and time for AW Battle of the Belts 8, which is going to be on October 21st, beginning at 10. So a busy weekend of wrestling for that coming up. It's going to be at the FedEx Forum live in Memphis. And we have one match announced right now. AW Trios Championship, the Acclaimed and Daddy S defending against Matt Menard, Angelo Parker, and Daniel Garcia, the not JAS. So hopefully they can put some steam. Maybe 8th time's the charm, where Battle of the Belts will mean something.
Man, you gotta make us care about this, man. You gotta make us care. Right now, it just feels like a tape segment.
We also had Logan Paul calling out Rey Mysterio following his disqualification victory in a boxing match over Dylan Dennis on Saturday. Paul brought up Mysterio's name in the post-fight interview, saying he beat him once and he could do it again. He specifically said he was coming for Mysterio's WWE US title. We had Rey Mysterio responding on Twitter saying, "I'm not hard to find, homie," every Friday night on SmackDown. So this is kind of cool, seeing that, Logan Paul obviously is wanting WWE championships. He's told this to Sports Illustrated back earlier in the year. This was so random. Like, he called out Rey Mysterio after a boxing match. I'm sure people were shocked, but you're trying to cross over the fan bases, which is cool.
Big ups to Logan Paul for being, you just were in a boxing match, and to have the wherewithal to plug and promote and execute a storyline for pro wrestling in your post-fight interview. Hats off to Logan Paul. I loved it.
Our final news in the quick hitters: MLW's Davey Boy Smith Jr. has undergone emergency surgery to remove part of his appendix and colon, according to a social media post. So he was forced to withdraw from Saturday's MLW Slaughterhouse event, where he was scheduled to challenge Alex Kane for the World Championship. He posted that he had undergone surgery. A long-winded post that apparently they found out that he had appendicitis, and then he was also discovered to be suffering from diverticulitis, and part of his colon would have to be removed. So all thoughts go to Harry Smith and his family. Hopefully he's good. It seems like the surgery went okay. He said he's in stable condition, but he's in immense pain. He's going to keep everybody updated. So it seems like he'll be on the shelf for a little bit.
Yeah, all the best to Davey Boy.
With that being said, let's get to the week ahead and preview what's coming up in the week of wrestling.
The week ahead.
Here we are with the week ahead in wrestling. AEW Dynamite, Jay White versus Pentasero Miedo. We get the Dynamite Dozen Battle Royal, which will be the 5th time. So they're going to be holding this for the 5th time. And the winner of the 12-man Battle Royal will face the current Dynamite Diamond Ring holder and reigning AEW World Champion MJF on Wednesday, October 25th from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. MJF's won every single one of them. So we will see where this goes. Ricky Stark's challenge last year, it helped elevate his star. Maybe they elevate someone different in this term. Any early inclinations who it might be?
I don't know, man. I mean, it looks like they're pointing towards Juice, to get that match in the lead up to this Full Gear bout with Jay White. I will say, to me, the Dynamite Diamond Ring is a heel prop.
Right.
It makes more sense to put this on a heel than MJF to continue this reign. He's got 4 banners hanging in the rafters for this Dynamite Diamond Ring. So it'll be interesting to see who they throw this ring on.
So also we have Kenny Omega versus Kyle Fletcher. We get a Sting promo addressing the fans. We get Timeless Toni Storm debuting her newest blockbuster film. And Jim Ross is going to conduct a sit down with Nick Wayne and his mom. So that's going to be on Dynamite.
That'll be interesting.
On Raw, that's happening right now. We have the undisputed WWE Tag Team Championship on the line. Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso defending against Damian Priest and Finn Balor the Judgment Day. We get the IC Championship. Gunther defending against Big Bronson Reed. We get a Falls Count Anywhere match. Shinsuke Nakamura versus Ricochet. Rhea Ripley versus Shayna Baszler. And Piper Niven versus Natalya. Keep in mind, this is the season premiere of Raw, so they're kind of going all out with 2 title matches and some stipulations, which seems cool.
Yeah, man, this IC title, the matches we're getting, this Gunther Bronson Reed match could be a banger, dude.
Absolutely. On Tuesday, back to the norm here in NXT, but we have still a decent card here. Winner gets an NXT Championship match at Halloween Havoc. Carmelo Hayes versus Dijak versus Baron Corbin. We get the Bada Bing, Bada Boom Battle Royal for the NXT Tag Team Championship at Halloween Havoc. And we get Tegan Nox versus Lyra Valkyria. So NXT this is they're featuring their roster. Maybe they can transcend having some of the talent from, they got eyes from Cena and Taker and Cody Rhodes. Maybe they can pop another rating here.
Dude, where's Undertaker? Where's Cena? I was tuning in for those guys.
And also on Thursday, we get the go-home show for Bound for Glory. Trinity and Mickie James teaming up against Giselle Shaw and Savannah Evans. Rhino and PCO versus Moose and Brian Myers. Speedball Mike Bailey versus Samurai Del Sol. We get a no DQ match. Crazy Steve versus Black Taurus and Heath versus Kenny King. Keep in mind, this was taped about 6 weeks ago in Memphis. It's the 4th edition of the taping. So this is their go-home show that they've already built up Bound for Glory. They don't need anymore, but it leaves a lot to be desired when you tape 4 weeks out.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of good segments, though. Maybe the matches leave a little bit to be desired, but I think it's going to be they're going to ramp up the build to Bound for Glory probably in some promos and some tape segments.
On SmackDown, we get the Women's Championship on the line. Io Sky defends against Charlotte Flair, and then Santos Escobar versus Montez Ford. I think Charlotte Flair could win this title, by the way. So that's next week.
I think so, too. I think it could be Charlotte taking this title, and then we see Jade and Charlotte maybe starting to heat up.
For Survivor Series, I agree. And finally, AEW Collision, we have one match announced. It's Miro versus Action Andretti. Of course, CJ Perry playing a role in this. Collision was telling that story. I'm sure we're going to get more announcements during the week, but AEW Collision, they're not doing well ratings-wise, but that doesn't mean they're not telling stories there, so make sure you guys check it out.
Yeah, screw the ratings. There's some good stories being told on Collision, and the poor bastards that CJ Perry picks to manage are just going to be in the warpath of Miro. So I'm excited to see how this story goes and who becomes the first person that truly is a player that CJ Perry aligns with.
Well, that's all we got. Let's get our plugs in and get out of here and start our week off to a fresh start.
Yeah, guys, go to theturnbuckletavern.com, Apple, Spotify, YouTube. That's the big hub. That's where all of our stuff is. So go check it out. All of our shows across the board. We have shows every day of the week. Check it out.
Yeah, make sure you guys stay tuned to everything, turnbuckletavern.com, as we usually say. But this weekend, I will not be watching Bound for Glory live in person. If you guys are in the Amesbury, Massachusetts area, I'll be at Rad Pro Wrestling, Power Transfer, ring announcing. So make sure you guys, if you're there in the area, come say hi. I have some dates coming up this weekend. 10/21 is going to be the Rad Pro, and then following the next week is 10/27 for Remarkable Wrestling's Halloween show. So going to be busy. Stay tuned to social media if you guys are ever in town. Make sure you guys support independent wrestling.
Yeah, guys, thanks for tuning in. Leave us some 5-star reviews. Tell your wrestling friends about the Tavern. Help us grow. But until next Monday, when we wine and dine with you kings and queens, stay out of the alley and away from the pork and beans. God luck and good speed.
Reach for the sky, boy.